My name is Alexander Nietzsche. I am a grad student at the University of Denver. I am in the Master's Marketing program, and the session that I attended today is Why Your Organization Needs a Futurist in Residence. This was given by Jessica Clark, who works for Dot Connector Studio, Trista Harris from Future Good, and Lori Melikar from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. This lecture primarily talked about futurists, kind of what they are, what they do, why they add value, and why you should obviously consider one for your company or for a position in your company, or at the very least hiring one as a consultant. And so they kind of talked about what they did and how they went around. So first, they talk about how they want to pioneer ideas for an equitable future. They really want to take the current trends, the current technology, and do their best to see how it evolves so they can see a future they're also trying to be equitable about it, make sure that it benefits everyone instead of just certain groups of people. And so generally they try to always be looking 5 to 15 years in the future in order to make sure that they're actually staying in the future as they go, but also still keeping up with the different projects and ideas they have as that time gets closer. And so they're also realize and recognize that within different industries, futurists can take on a much different role depending. Like, for example, a futurist in the tech industry is probably going to be a lot more different than a futurist in the agriculture or the food industry. And so the best way that they said that they wanted to be able to get different proposals, actually, one of the speakers talked about how they opened it up, did an open call proposal for different ideas within her industry that were very short, 2 pages total with a one-line budget, just for something that, hey, this is in the future, we might not have the tech or the capability to do this right now, but theoretically, what if we could do this? And so this is how it might work, this is our budget, and they rolled from there. They said, obviously not all ideas are winners, but still, they said it really was able to get the ball rolling on a lot of things. It really helps companies start to branch out, to understand, okay, now that we have what we are doing now, we have a better look in the future. How do we connect points A and B to make sure we are able to be where we want to be as a company in 10 to 15 years? Now, overall, they said with this process, they wanted to democratize the future. And by that, they really just more meant that the future is accessible to everyone rather than it being dictated by a select group of people, cultures, or organizations with power. This approach really is able to emphasize the importance of including diverse perspectives and voices into the conversation about what the future should look like, so that it reflects needs and ideas on a much broader spectrum for society, which in turn will impact the company and how they make changes and approach different situations. This could include even just being able to give different groups of people their own sovereignty with certain things. Like one of the examples they mentioned was different groups of indigenous people working on data and code and trying to get their own sovereignty with that so they can own the code traces of it if it's being used or has been added on to, adjusted, edited, etc. There's still at least some point of reference of, okay, no, it still came from this coder, from this group of people, so they're able to have their own sovereignty as the world gets more digital and interconnected, allowing for the different cultures and people to still have their own place in the world while still being able to share and connect with everyone else. And so after kind of giving us a better idea of what it is exactly they do as futurists and why people need one, they wanted to actually give some examples of different trends that they've noticed and likely where they're going to end up to be able to show their knowledge as experts. So one of the examples they gave were trends in public health and healthcare in general. They believe that there's going to be a rise in biotech and an increase in telehealth. And they were also seemed very concerned about unaddressed AI biases and how it interacts with different patients and different situations, which just honestly they believe hasn't been accounted for and still needs a lot of time, work, and testing. The second topic concerning trends they talked about was actually in media systems. And so they said sensory media will kind of be using sensory clickbait to manipulate users' emotions to be able to actually get them a little more invested and start to do that as technology improves and it gets a lot more interactive. Another trend they talked about was an acceleration of kids and teens getting radicalized through social media, or even just therapists or other healthcare professionals reaching patients through social media. They believe that with these different media systems and these trends, all of these things are going to be a lot more prevalent and part of our daily life in the next 10 to 15 years. And finally, the last example they gave was more in government and different policies. So they predicted that government will face a huge pressure from the public going forward, wanting a lot more action than we've seen in previous years. And also, they believe that local governments will likely become important sources for different governance innovation. So instead of things kind of trickling down or just applying to one town, they think based on trends that we're going to see something start small and then eventually grow and expand to where it could impact the whole state or potentially even nationally. And then finally, they said also that there is also a lot more increased vulnerability with government and related organizations to manipulation, hacking, and ransoming. And they only believe this issue is going to get worse as time goes on, technology improves. And yeah, the government's able to keep up to a certain point, but it just kind of leaves them a lot more open, which is something that they advised that they planned for. And was to them another example of why even the government needs futurists to be able to help them plan out and know what to expect based on the current trends. Overall, I thought the session was very informative. Personally, I didn't know what a futurist was, so it was already very educational in that fact. And even once they explained it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see people using that, but I figured more on a consultant basis, just checking in on different projects, different ideas. But as they went and talked, it really was cool to see how they were able to justify and give really good reasoning as to why futurists definitely are going to have a more solid place within different companies, especially as technology starts changing and evolving so fast, like we saw with AI and ChatGPT and generative AI generally, how in just a year or two, it's blown up into such a huge worldwide phenomenon, has impacted so much technology. And so it goes from futurists needing to kind of check in here and there, okay, trends are slowly going, to, oh no, things are here, things are present, things are changing now. And so because of that, I definitely see a lot more utility in futurists, and depending on the company and situation, I could see more frequent profession that pops up going forward, which I'm okay with, and I'm kind of curious to see if a lot of these trends that they mentioned are actually going to pan out the way they said.